Number 10. Captain Kate. Captain Kate is possibly one of my favorite mutants of all time. You may not know her as Captain Kate if you haven't been reading recent comics, but you've definitely heard of Kitty Pryde. Now, she prefers to go by Kate. Just so you know, little update for you. But whatever you call her, she is still equally awesome. Even if she's had less luck with staying alive lately in the Marauders team series, Kate's powers allow her to phase through whoever or whatever is in her way for the most part. She can also extend her phasing powers to objects and people around her. And we've seen her become powerful enough to even at one point phase a giant bullet through a planet and later phase an entire planet through an amber casing. Now in the latter, she was actually power boosted, but still, how cool is that? Kate serves on the Quiet Council on the Spring Table and earned her seat through accepting the position of Red Queen with the Hellfire Trading Company. The Quiet Council is considered the ruling government body for the sentient mutant island nation of Krakoa, where many of Earth's mutants reside currently in the comics. Number 9. Emma Frost. Emma Frost is one of the most powerful mutants around, and not even just in her own power set. Emma is known not just for being a powerful mutant and telepath, but also for being an extremely gifted teacher. In fact, even back when she was still somewhat a villain in the comics, she swapped bodies with Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, and managed to beat him in his own use of his own powers. It was through Emma taking hold of Bobby that we'd actually learned that Iceman could actually change from ice to water as needed. Now in her diamond form, Emma no longer needs to eat to stay alive, and is considered extremely tough and durable, making Emma actually somewhat tough to face in a fist fight, unlike most other telepaths who are generally known for being, you know, a lot more squishy. Like Kate, whom Emma recruited, Emma also belongs to the Spring subsection of the Council, while soon to be stepping down as she is finishing out her time as the Hellfire Trading Company's White Queen. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, please head on over to check out our newest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime, and get your anime manga fix. Number 8. Sebastian Shaw. Shaw has bested both Kate and Emma before and proven himself a literal powerhouse in the comics. Sure, I may want to put him at the 10 spot because he's so despicable, but it should also be acknowledged that he is one of the most powerful energy manipulating mutants around. Shaw can absorb energy and use it to strengthen himself or store it and then release it back at his opponents in a powerful blast. Shaw is also a member of the Spring area of the Quiet Council and is also known for his role currently as Black King of the Hellfire Trading Company, although he will also likely soon be stepping down to make way for Lord Chantel, who is planning to replace his position, becoming the company's Black Queen in his stead. Number 7. Kate Pryde. Kitty Pryde, as she was once known, or Shadowcat, is an immensely powerful mutant who can make herself and others intangible. As such, Kate proves to be a very skilled fighter when integrating her abilities into her fighting styles. She's also a protege of Wolverine's, and you can definitely see that when it comes to some of her fighting skills and some of her moves. Kate now also holds a position of power on Krakoa, being a member of the Hellfire Trading Company and allying herself with Emma Frost, the White Queen, in becoming the Red Queen of that company. Due to her unique abilities, Kate is unable to use Krakoan gates, and this is almost something that caused her to be unable to emerge from her pod when being resurrected after dying in the comics. Kate can phase people and objects and has managed to phase a giant bullet through the earth, saving all life on it, and while power boost, also phased an entire planet through an amber casing. Number 6. Exodus. Exodus recently has had some really epic moments in the comics, and I am super here for it. He is Benet du Paris. He is ancient at this point, having initially been a young man during the Holy Crusades in France during the 12th century. For many years, Exodus was asleep, but he is most definitely awake now. And while normally a villain, he finds himself currently allied with Krakoa, as most villains these days are, because villains are kind of not as much of a thing in this new world. Exodus is an Omega level psionic, who has used his powers to combat the Unimind and fight eternal giants known as the Hex recently in the comics. Exodus sits at the Winter Table, which is known for being sort of the more radical and less morally focused area of the council. Winter is made up of former villains.
Number 5. Oya. When Hope Summers came back from her future travels with Cable, there were 5 mutants whose X gene and abilities activated. These 5 were known as the Lights, and they were the first mutants since the events of M-Day, making them pretty important. Ide Okonkwo was 14 years old, living in Nigeria's Delta state when her mutant powers of thermokinesis activated, causing her to accidentally burn down her village. She was almost taken out by the military until the X-Men showed up to save her. Now, under the direction of Hope, and with the consent of Cyclops, the Lights began training as a rescue team for any other new mutant manifestations. Idea's ability of thermokinesis allows her to alter temperatures around her, with the limitation being that she cannot simply create hot or cold temperatures. She can only rechannel pre-existing temperature, meaning she needs the presence of heat to generate cold, and cold to generate heat, and vice versa. Oya first appeared in Uncanny X-Men number 528 in September of 2010.
Number 4. Apocalypse. Apocalypse is definitely known for being one of the greatest mutant powerhouses around. And although he might not have the same typical sets of powers that we often associate with being, like the most OP, I guess, he has something that is seemingly even better, and actually grants him a lot of power and a lot of powers. The power of evolution, and often celestial technology as well, which, as we are also seeing in AXE with the reprogramming and resurrection of a celestial god, is pretty epic. Apocalypse is godlike in terms of what he is capable of, and is one of the toughest mutants around. He was also one of the original members of the Quiet Council, sitting at the table of Autumn alongside Charles and Eric. He even claimed a new Krakoan version of his name. However, following the Otherworld tournament, Apocalypse, upon reuniting with his family, decided to retire for a time, basically go on like a mutant family vacation, which sounds super fun, and I wish that was a book. I would read that. Number 3. Moira X. Moira X is also known to many of us still by the name Moira Taggart. Though it was unknown for many years, Moira herself is a mutant. She was thought to be a human member and ally to the X-Men for many years, but in House of X it was revealed that Moira is actually a mutant whose power is reincarnation. But not in the traditional sense of reincarnation. After Moira dies, she doesn't just come back to life as like a new person, she lives her life all over again from the beginning. According to Destiny, Moira will likely only live through 10 lives, perhaps 11 if she makes the right plays, meaning that she isn't immortal, but she does bring with her to each life more and more knowledge in terms of how events can play out, which has brought us to the life and reality that she exists in today, with the fantastically powerful mutant island nation of Krakoa. Krakoa basically would not exist without Moira, which to me seems pretty powerful. All that knowledge. And I see her with Destiny's journals. What is she doing? What's going on? Number 2. Storm. Storm has just been such a powerhouse lately in the comics. I would be remiss if I didn't give her one of the tippy top spots that I possibly could. Well, Jean was undermined during her attempt to take out the newly risen celestial god, the progenitor in AXE, and struggled to fight back against the Eternals as they attacked Krakoa. Storm was forced to race to planet Arakko in her absence. Uranos had attacked, and it was basically up to Storm to help fight back against his destructive weapons that were left behind there. Storm not only helped to terraform all of Mars and is a member of the Quiet Council, also a part of the Summer section, but she is also the regent of Arakko, in essence the planet's ruler and leader, also having a seat and holding the tie-breaking vote on the Great Ring of Arakko. Number 1. Hope Summers. Hope Summers has to take her top spot because technically she kind of like has all the mutant powers at their highest possible levels almost whenever she wants, because that's kind of what her mutant power is. That is also of course assuming she is in the vicinity of those mutants, which guess what? She likely would be in a lot of cases. While Apocalypse, Jean, and Magneto are no longer on the Quiet Council, with Hope even taking Magneto's old seat as part of the Autumn section, she actually is around everyone else pretty frequently as a fellow council member. Hope is not just a member of the Quiet Council either, but is also a member of another super important team, the Five. The Five are the team that makes mutant resurrection possible on the island, with Hope actually being a key member and also the leader of that team.
Coming in at number 10, it's Pickles. I think his name alone just made me want to include him on this list. Pickles is what is known as a Bamf, a race of demons who are basically little Nightcrawler-like imps, who possess similar attributes and powers as Nightcrawler and Azazel. Pickles himself lived inside Beast's van and was a backup in case anyone needed immediate transport somewhere, but he would later travel with Jean Grey and the X-Men in Jean Grey number 1 from 2017. As a Bamf, Pickles can teleport by displacing himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it, and then return to the original dimension at a certain distance from the point of departure, But unlike Nightcrawler, Pickles doesn't require foreknowledge of his destination in order to safely teleport there. But much like Nightcrawler, Pickles can stick to objects with the surface of his hands and feet, and he's got a sweet little prehensile tail. This little imp also possesses an unknown degree of muscle memory mimicry, which enables him to quickly learn and perform new martial arts with little instruction or training. He's definitely one of those few minor X-Men characters, but he's just so cute. Number 9. Gazing Nightshade. First appearing in X-Men Blue number 6 in June of 2017, the Madripoor mutant calling herself Gazing Nightshade was part of a ruthless mutant vigilante group who were inspired by Wolverine called the Raksha. The group was stopped by Jimmy Hudson and the X-Men and eventually were invited to the X-Mansion. Gazing Nightshade has the really cool mutant ability of despair inducement, meaning whoever Nightshade gazes upon enters into a trance-like state of sorrow, fueled by their deepest regrets. And to make it just 10 times more metal, both the eyes of Gazing Nightshade's victims and her own eyes bleed when she uses her powers. I mean, that's not the coolest thing. She joins Polaris' makeshift roster of X-Men in X-Men Blue number 25 in 2018 before going back to the Raksha. Number 8. Trinary. Shilpa Khatri first showed up in 2018's X-Men Red number 1 as a new mutant joining Jean Grey's team of X-Men. Shilpa was a young mutant from India who developed technopathic mutant abilities, and first used them to top up the bank accounts of every working Indian woman using the money from 25 of the biggest earning CEOs in India. That's pretty cool. And while I think that's awesome and kind of hilarious, her father did not, and he reported his own daughter to the Indian Mutant Defense Force, which is where Jean Grey and her team rescued Trinary from. As a technopath, she has the ability to psychically control all forms of technology, such as computers, cell phones, and all that junk. Her limitation at this time is that she can only control technology that is in her line of sight, and her range is currently undetermined, but judging from other technopaths, she has potential to get much stronger. It just remains to be seen.
Number 7. Professor X. Known for being one of the main leaders of the Mutant Nation, now kind of the main leader in Magneto's absence from the council, Professor X in a way is the one who started it all. He was the one who had a dream, and it was his dream and reconciliation of his beliefs with Magneto's, who were both brought together by Moira McTaggart, that gave birth to the Mutant Nation of Krakoa that we have now in the comics. Without Charles, we really wouldn't be where we are in the X books today. Charles sits at the table of Autumn and is the only remaining original member from that table when the Council and Nation were founded.
Number 6. Gentle. Although Nesno Abidemi, son of a Wakandan woman and a Russian man, first appeared in 2006, he was only a student at the Xavier Institute until he joined the X-Men in 2009's Uncanny X-Men. Because of his father, Gentle was never treated right in Wakanda, even by his own mom, which is a little hypocritical because, she got pregnant with a dude, but whatever. He was raised at the Wakandan royal court and was sent to the Xavier Institute by Aurora Monroe when his powers first manifested. Gentle's mutant ability is muscle mass expansion, which allows him to increase his size and strength almost instantly. He's done battle with a Sentinel, and his strength is said to rival Colossus, with his resting strength increasing every time he uses his powers. Because of his poor treatment though, he suffered from psychological trauma, which caused him to suffer great pain and seizures. To help his condition, Gentle's entire body was covered with vibranium tattoos to prevent him from overexerting, and they essentially keep him alive, with the added side effect of looking sick.
Number 5. Iceman. Of course, Iceman has to make our cut this time around. Bobby has had such a glow up when it comes to his powers and what he's capable of since he first appeared in the comics. At one point, he managed to create a flash freeze so powerful that he successfully temporarily froze over all of hell, or a version of hell at least. It's kinda hard to tell in Marvel Comics sometimes. He's also managed to change states, allowing him to travel vast distances quickly as he moves through and as water. He can also manipulate water as well as ice and snow. Not only that, but he's managed to use his powers to create clone-like life forms, creating ice or snow clones to aid him and his allies in battle. Iceman has come a long way from being a snowman lookalike sporting his little black booties in his early days. I do miss those black booties though. Where they at?
Number 4. Armor. Hisako Ichiki lived in Tokyo, Japan with her brother and parents when her mutant abilities activated. and she joined the Xavier Institute. She first appeared becoming just a student and member of Kitty Pryde's Paladin Squad in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 in 2004, and would go on to become a member of the New X-Men after participating in Emma Frost's Battle Royale in New X-Men Volume 2 number 23 and 26. But finally, she officially joined the main X-Men team in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 25 in 2008. Hisako's powers are pretty cool. As you might suspect from her name, Armor can generate strong, powerful, durable, and impenetrable psionic exoskeleton armor around her entire physical body that augments her strength, endurance, stamina, agility, invulnerability, and durability. The power of her abilities are greatly tied to her family and bloodline. So, for example, the strength, power, and size of her psionic armor greatly enhances when her relatives pass away. Which, I mean, if she was a villain, that could go south pretty quick. But luckily she's not, so we're good.
Number 3. Marvel Girl. Normally, Jean is a character who would take the top spot for a most powerful list involving mutants. Y'all know how much I love Jean Grey. But we've decided to change it up this time around. Jean Grey has currently retaken her previous codename during her time as the original X-Men roster member, Marvel Girl. She is an Omega level psionic with extremely powerful telepathic abilities and quite powerful telekinetic abilities as well. Marvel Girl left the Quiet Council to join the reformed X-Men, but was a part of the summer section of the council.
Number 2. Genesis. Honestly, don't know how y'all are gonna feel about this one. Evan Sabanur was created by Phantom X as a clone of Apocalypse, and as such has a lot of his powers, including superhuman strength, superhuman durability, and self-molecular manipulation, meaning Evan has total control over the molecular structure of his own body, enabling him to alter his form at will. He is able to transform his limbs into various weapons and equipment such as blades and bludgeons for combat, or rocket boots for flight, as well as being able to alter his body to change in size. Evan also has a healing factor that can regenerate from serious injury like getting gashed by Daken's claws. And he can adapt his body to any disease or environment at will and sometimes subconsciously. Another small, innocent ability Evan has is the potential for virtually any conceivable superhuman power ever. He once showcased fire or plasma breath when fighting Faithful John's mind drones, and also has a degree of energy projection, able to project dematerializer blasts from his eyes and emit energy blasts from his hands. He first appeared in Uncanny X-Force number 7 in 2011, but wasn't on the X-Men team until 2014, and even then, kind of as a student. As the clone of Apocalypse, Evan will potentially develop any of the powers possessed by him, but it also means people do fear him, which leaves him with a bit of an insecurity. And number 1, Darwin. Even somewhat casual fans of the X-Men know who Darwin is, if only because he was that guy who is supposed to be able to adapt to anything but gets de-lifed in like 2 seconds in the X-Men First Class movie. People were mad. And honestly, yeah, so was I. That makes no sense. Adapt to this, shut up. He literally could have. Armando Munoz, or Darwin, was first introduced in X-Men Deadly Genesis number 2 in December of 2005, and he would join the X-Men shortly after that. Darwin's powers are just the coolest. He's able to adapt to any situation, so basically, using his powers, he's been able to grow functioning gills after being submerged in water, gain night vision after being in the dark for several seconds, be able to survive without oxygen when in space, his skin has become fireproof when it's exposed to flames, and after touching Hela, Darwin became a death deity and gained powers similar to Hela, including immortality, Asgardian physiology, and control over life and death. There was even a time his intelligence increased itself to understand the Shi'ar language by looking at it in written form, although sometimes his powers do not always take the effect he wants, like, for example, during his fight with the Hulk, his body teleported him away from the battle rather than supplying a power that would actually allow him to defeat the Hulk, which is kind of hilarious to be honest.
Number 10. Gambit. Gambit might not be the most powerful mutant on this list, and may sometimes be more of a background member of the team in terms of what he's up to or just in terms of fighting, but he has a lot of potential. We've seen alternate realities where the full potential of Gambit's powers were realized, putting him at an almost god level in terms of what he was actually capable of. Gambit's powers allow him to supercharge objects with kinetic energy, causing them to explode through accelerating the molecules that make up said object. He can do this to something small or something large, but the bigger the object, the longer it can take for him to charge it. He has, however, proven how dangerous he can be even just by charging smaller objects that can get up close to vital areas, such as your face and your neck, like necklaces or earrings. Boom. I would not want him to supercharge any of the object close to my face. None of my pins, please. They're like right over my heart. Yikes. Number 9. Ink. Not all X-Men members are mutants, and Ink is one prime example. Ink actually did believe he was a mutant initially, and so did the rest of the X-Men, until we learned that his tattoo artist was actually the mutant in this scenario. Through his mutant tattoo artist, Ink has different tattoos, and each give him a different power. He has even managed to channel the powers of the Phoenix Force before through a Phoenix tat, which was over his eye. Basically, with Ink, he can have any power that his tattoo artist, Leon Nunez, gives him. We haven't seen him for a while, but he was listed in the Ten of Swords event handbook as being an active member of the X-Men. So we can assume he's somewhere on Krakoa, mostly chilling probably, but still available to use his tattoos and his powers when needed. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to let us know, because I want to do a part 3. I got a lot of mutants, and I want to talk to you about them. We also have a new channel, it's called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and you need to go check it out and subscribe for all of the good bonus content. We're gonna have lots of exciting things on there, so go subscribe now and be ready. Number 8. Cyclops. Not just powerful because of his optic blasts, but Cyclops also brings the power of his amazing tactical and leadership skills, which also adds to his power and makes him a more valuable X-Men member. I actually also just got a really cool, I just ordered like a Cyclops pin. It's gonna have his optic blast like going outside of the border of the pin. I'm so excited for it to arrive. Initially in the comics, when Cyclops first appeared, he was also made out to be the most powerful member of the team, with his optic blast being considered to be one of the most useful powers when it came to fighting enemies. At least that's what it seemed like. Every time they had someone really strong, they're like, Cyclops, use your optic blasts! Or initially they didn't call them optic blasts, but that's what we call them now, so. Cyclops is also a master of trigonometry and knows how to fire an optic blast to hit just about anything due to his insane math skills. That's truly mathematical.
Number 7. Gabby Kinney. We included Laura Kinney on the last list, so is it cheating to use her clone? I personally say no, because Gabrielle Kinney, aka Honey Badger and recently Scout, is just awesome. Like a little feisty killing machine with adamantium bone sickles and crazy regenerative healing factor, and that also improves her strength, speed, and stamina. Gabby first appeared in All New Wolverine number 2 in 2015, and she had a long history that, just like her other clone sisters, intertwined a lot with Laura, her genetic sister, and Wolverine, her genetic father. As Honey Badger, Gabby was seemingly a favorite of her sister, and basically became a sidekick to Laura Kinney, joining Jean Grey's X-Men alongside her sister in X-Men Red number 1 in 2018. While Laura went on to become the new Wolverine, Gabby would go on to become Scout, and one of the main Wolverine family members. Oh, also her and Jonathan the Unstoppable, an actual Wolverine, like the animal, shared an immediate bond, and he is basically her pet, which is both really cool and kind of hilarious.
Number 6. Professor X. Or just X as he's sometimes known now. Professor X has always been thought of as one of the most powerful members of the X-Men. He was the first leader and teacher of the team who not only pushed his mutants to be better, sometimes controversially so, but also showed up initially to save the day when an opponent proved to be too challenging for the heroic youngsters. Professor X can also shut off your brain, he can make you forget who you are, so he's definitely not someone you'd want to fight. Unless you got a really strong mind, I guess. Professor X has low-level telekinetic skills and powerful telepathic skills that allow him to manipulate, alter, and probe the minds of others, as well as communicate telepathically from a great distance and sense other mutants. He also is now pretty much permanently wearing Cerebro, so he's got a pretty big boost to his power levels, also acting as the important Google Drive of sorts for the mutant minds on Krakoa, so that if they die, he can use a backup of their mind to resurrect them. So he's pretty important. Number 5. Magneto. Magneto was another one who was one of the key members of the Quiet Council in the beginning, one of the original founding members of basically Krakoa as it is today. Like Charles, without Eric, or Max if you prefer, there would be no Krakoa really to speak of. He sat on the Autumn Table as well, alongside Professor X. Magneto recently retired from the Quiet Council, deciding to move to the new mutant planet of Arakko, formerly known to the people of Earth as Mars before the mutants came and terraformed it, transported the island of Arakko there, and laid claim to it as their own. Number 4. Rogue. Rogue is definitely one of the most powerful mutants out there. She also happens to be one of my all-time favorites. Something about wanting to be closer to people, but always kind of feeling like you were so removed from them, or had to, for some reason, keep your distance. The idea of like guarding yourself. Those feelings of isolation just really spoke to me, and honestly still sometimes do. Although it should be noted that Rogue has since come much more into her own, with her gaining more control over her power, meaning that she is no longer as burdened with having to worry about hurting hurting those she cares for. Rogue's powers allow her to absorb the powers and even memories of others through touch, and abilities too, so it's not just like superhuman people that she can take the skills of. She can take on multiple powers at once, but the setback is that her touch can also drain the life force energy of whoever she makes contact with. I mean, drawback and a plus in some cases. It turns out that the loss of control of her powers came from a very real place for most of us. Her own fear of being close to people, of intimacy, and of acceptance. For Rogue, she just had to make the choice to accept herself and not be afraid, and it was through that self-realization, that basically therapeutic work, that she was able to take control of her abilities. So if you see her making out with Gambit a ton in the comics recently, that's why. And if you see Rogue coming your way, you don't have to be afraid. Unless you're one of the baddies, of course. And then be afraid. And probably run.
Number 3. Bloodstorm. This is probably a bit of a spicy choice for this list. Bloodstorm is none other than Aurora Monroe, only she is from a different universe. Earth 21710 to be specific. This version of Aurora was a thief living in the streets of Egypt when she attempted to pickpocket a man who turned out to be Dracula. She was turned into a vampire and eventually managed to free herself from Dracula's control and find new purpose among the X-Men. Unfortunately for her though, her thirst for blood overpowered her, which resulted in her ending at least both Beast and Professor X, but it could have been more. She was recruited by the Goblin Queen of Earth 91240 as one of her hexmen, and they invaded Earth 616, where Bloodstorm decided to switch sides and help the time-displaced X-Men Blue team. She was eventually recruited to the team by Cyclops. Now this is obviously Aurora Monroe, and even if she is from another universe, she is still extremely powerful. But on top of that, she has all the powers of vampirism, including being capable of transforming her body into mist and a flock of bats, and using her gaze to hypnotize people into doing her bidding.
Number 2. Kid Omega. Kid Omega is Quentin Quire, another very feasible Phoenix Force host. Despite being younger and somewhat less experienced, and the running gag at the beginning of the Dawn of X era where he'd pretty much die each issue, he is still considered to be extremely powerful. Quentin is an Omega level telepath and telekinetic. He is also hyper intelligent due to his capacity to think at high speeds and the way his mind organizes thoughts. He can accomplish feats that not even the immensely powerful mutant Rachel Summers could manage, which is pretty impressive. Rachel Summers is also pretty powerful. Rachel Summers should also be on one of these lists. Number 1. Vulcan. Vulcan is pretty insanely powerful, and in a dangerous way too, because he's so capable of evil due to being manipulated during his time in the Vault. In fact, in Empire we saw a fraction likely of what his darker side was capable of when he ran into the Kotati while out for a walk on the blue area of the moon, where the Summers house is located. He attempted to deal with the situation peacefully when he approached them, showing mercy initially, but when provoked his darker side was unleashed, causing him to kill everyone save one member of the Kotati, who was left basically traumatized, uncontrollably uttering the word Krakoa on repeat. Vulcan is believed to be beyond even Omega levels when it comes to his powers.